Hi, so it's time for Tell Me a Story. And the book that we're reading is called Esperanza Rising. So the last things we had read was that Esperanza is raised to be in a position of privilege. She has her family has a farm and contains many workers and the people that work the fields. And she has helped with the harvest, and but usually she has a house and people that help take care of her in the house and the farm. And her father has been apparently murdered by some rancheros. There's where she's living, there's conflict going on where the privileged have a lot of resources and everyone else has very little. Her father has been helpful in giving land to some people, so he's tried to deal with inequities in their system, but apparently some people at least were unaware of that, and he is murdered. So this is taking place on her birthday morning. Usually there's a lot of things that go on, and so Abuelito and Mama and are with Esperanza. She's gotten this doll that she gets every year, a beautiful China doll from her dad. Her dad is now passed, and so she's after receiving the doll, is hugging it. Is the last thing that she's going to get from her dad. So Tio Luis and Tio Marco came every day and went into Papa's study to take care of the family business. At first, they stayed only a few hours, but soon they became like La Calaza, the squash plant on Alfonso's garden, whose giant leaves spread out, encroaching upon anything smaller. The uncles eventually stayed each day until dark, taking all their meals at the ranch as well. Esperanza could tell that Mama was uneasy with their constant presence. Finally, the lawyer came to settle the estate. Mama, Esperanza, and Abuelita sat properly in their black dresses as the uncles walked into the study. A little too loudly, Tio Luis says, "Ramona, grieving does not suit you. I hope you will not wear black all year." Mama did not answer, but maintained her composure. They nodded to Abuelita, but as usual said nothing to Esperanza. The talk began about bank loans and investments. It all seemed so complicated to Esperanza, and her mind wandered. She had not been in this room since Papa died. She looked around at Papa's desk and books, Mama's basket of crocheting with the silver crochet hooks that Papa had bought her in Guadalajara, the table near the door that held Papa's rose clippers, and beyond the double doors, his garden. Her uncle's papers were strewn across the desk. Papa never kept his desk that way. Tio Luis sat in Papa's chair as if it were his own, and then let Esperanza notice the belt buckle. Papa's belt buckle on Tio Luis's belt. It was wrong. Everything was wrong. Tio Luis should not be sitting in Papa's chair. He should not be wearing Papa's belt buckle with the brand of the ranch on it. For the 1,000th time, she wiped the tears that streamed down her face, but this time they were angry tears. A look of indignation passed between Mama and Abuelito. Were they feeling the same? "Ramona," said the lawyer, "your husband, Sixto Ortega, left this house and all of its contents to you and your daughter. You will also receive the yearly income from the grapes. As you know, it is not customary to leave land to women, and since Louis was the banker on the loan, Sixto left the land to him. Which makes things rather awkward, said Tio Louise. I am the bank president and would like to live accordingly. Now that I own this beautiful land, I would like to purchase the house from you for this amount. He handed Mama a piece of paper. Mama looked at it and said, this is our home. My husband meant for us to live here, and the house, it is worth 20 times this much. So no, I will not sell. Besides, where would we live? I predicted you would say no, Ramona, said Tio Louise, and I have a solution to your living arrangement. I have a proposal, actually, one of marriage. Who is he talking about? Thought Esperanza. Who would marry him? He cleared his throat. Of course, we would wait the appropriate amount of time out of respect for my brother. 1 year is customary, is it not? Even you can see that with your beauty and reputation and my position at the bank, we could be a very powerful couple. Did you know that I, too, have been thinking of entering politics? I am going to campaign for governor. And what woman would not want to be the governor's wife? Esperanza could not believe what she heard. Mama, marry Tia Louise? Marry a goat? She looked wide-eyed at him, then at Mama. Mama's face looked as if it were in terrible pain. She stood up and spoke slowly and deliberately. I have no desire to marry you, Louise, nor ever. Frankly, your offer offends me. Tia Louise's face hardened like a rock, and the muscles twitched in his narrow neck. You will regret your decision, Ramona. You must keep in mind that this house and those grapes are on my property. I can make things difficult for you, very difficult. I will let you sleep on the decision, for it is more than generous. Tia Louise and Tio Marco put on their hats and left. The lawyer looked uncomfortable and began gathering documents. Vultures, said Abuelito. Can he do this? Asked Mama. Yes, said the lawyer. Technically, he is now your landlord, but he could not build another house bigger. But he could build another house bigger and more pretentious anywhere in the property, said Mama. It is not the house that he wants, said Abuelito. It is your influence he wants. People in this territory love Sixto and respect you. With you as his wife, Louis could win any election. Mama stiffened. She looked at the lawyer and said, please officially relay this message to Louis. I will never, ever change my mind. I will do that, Ramona, said the lawyer, but be careful. He is a devious, dangerous man. The lawyer left, and Mama collapsed into a chair, put her head in her hands, and began to cry. Esperanza ran to her. Don't cry, Mama. Everything will be all right. But she didn't sound convincing, even to herself, because all she could think about was what Tio Louise had said, that Mama would regret her decision. That evening, Hortensia and Alfonso sat with Mama and Abuelito discussing the problem. Esperanza paced, and Miguel quietly looked on. Will the income from the grapes be enough to support the house and the servants? Said Mama. Maybe, said Alfonso. Then I will stay in my home, said Mama. Do you have any other money? Asked Alfonso. I have money in the bank, announced Abuelito. And then more quietly she added, Louis's bank. He would prevent you from taking it out, said Hortensia. If we need help, we could borrow money from our friends. From Senor Rodriguez, said Esperanza. Your uncles are very powerful and corrupt, said Alfonso. They can make things difficult for anyone who tries to help you. Remember, they are the banker and the mayor. The conversation continued to go in circles. Esperanza finally excused herself. She walked out to Papa's garden and sat on a stone bench. Many of the roses had dropped their petals, leaving the stem and the rose hip, the green, grape-like fruit of the rose. Abuelito said the rose hip contained the memories of the roses, and that when you drank tea made from it, you took in all the beauty that plant had known. These roses have known Papa, she thought. She would ask Hortensia to make rosehip tea tomorrow. Miguel found her in the garden and sat beside her. Since Papa died, he had been polite, but still had not talked to her. Anza, he said, using her childhood name. Which rose is yours? In recent years, his voice had become a deep throttle. She hadn't realized how much she missed hearing it. The sound brought tears to her eyes, but she quickly blinked them away. She pointed to the miniature pink blooms with delicate stems that climbed up the trellises. "And where is mine?" asked Miguel, nudging her like he did when they were younger and told each other everything. Esperanza smiled and pointed to the orange sunburst next to it. They had been young children the day Papa had planted one for each of them. "What does this all mean, Miguel?" "There are rumors in town that Luis intends to take over the ranch one way or another. Now that it seems true, we will probably leave for the United States to work." Esperanza shook her head as if to say no. She could not imagine living without Hortensia, Alfonso, and Miguel. "My father and I have lost faith in our country. We were born servants here, and no matter how hard we work, we will always be servants. Your father was a good man. He gave us a small piece of land and a cabin. But your uncles, you know their reputation. They will take it all away and treat us like animals. We will not work for them. The work is hard in the United States, but at least we will have a chance to be more than servants. But Mama and Abuelito, they, 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 they need, we need you." "My father says we won't leave until it is necessary." He reached over and took her hand. "I'm sorry about your papa." His touch was warm, and Esperanza's heart skipped. She looked at her hand in his and felt the color rising in her face. Surprised at her own blush, she pulled away from him. She stood and stared at the roses. An awkward silence built a wall between them. She glanced quickly at him. He was still looking at her, with his eyes full of hurt. Before Miguel left her there, he said softly, "You were right, Esperanza. In Mexico, we stand on different sides of the river." Esperanza went up to her room, thinking that nothing seemed right. She walked slowly around her bed, running her hand over the finely carved posts. She counted the dolls lined up on her dresser. 13, one for each birthday. When Papa was alive, everything was in order, like the dolls lined up in a row. She put on a long cotton nightgown with hand-sewn lace, picked up the new doll, and walked to the open window. Looking out over the valley, she wondered where they would go if they had to live somewhere else. They had no other family except Abuelito's sisters, and they were nuns in a convent. "I won't ever leave here," she whispered. A sudden breeze carried a familiar pungent smell. She looked down into the courtyard and saw the wooden box still sitting on the patio. It held the papayas from Senor Rodriguez, the ones that Papa had ordered that should have been served on her birthday. Their overripe sweetness now pervaded the air with each breath of wind. She crawled into her bed beneath the linen edges with lace. Hugging the doll, she tried to sleep, but her thoughts kept returning to Tio Luis. She felt sick at the thought of Mama marrying him. Of course she had told him no. She took a deep breath, still smelling the papayas and Papa's sweet intentions. Why did Papa have to die? Why did he leave me and Mama? She closed her eyes tight and did what she tried to do each night. She tried to find the dream, the one where Papa was singing the birthday song. Los higos, figs. The wind blew hard that night, and the house moaned and whistled. Instead of dreaming of birthday songs, Esperanza's sleep was filled with nightmares. An enormous bear was chasing her, getting closer and closer, and finally folding her in a tight embrace. Its fur caught in her mouth, making it hard to breathe. Someone tried to pull the bear away, but couldn't. The bear squeezed harder until it was smothering Esperanza. Then, when she thought she would suffocate, the bear grabbed her by the shoulders and shook her until her head wagged back and forth. Her eyes opened, then closed again. She realized she was dreaming, and for an instant, she felt relieved. But the shaking began again, harder this time. Someone was calling her. "Esperanza!" She opened her eyes. "Esperanza, wake up!" screamed Mama. "The house is on fire." Smoke drifted into the room. "Mama, what's happening?" "Get up, Esperanza. We must go get Abuelito." Esperanza heard Alfonso's deep voice yelling from somewhere downstairs. "Senor Tego, Esperanza!" Here we are, called Mama, grabbing a damp rag from the wash bowl and handing it to Esperanza to put over her mouth and nose. Esperanza swung around in a circle, looking for something, anything to say. She grabbed the doll. Then she and Mama hurried down the hall toward Abuelita's room, but it was empty. Alfonso, screamed Mama. Abuelito is not here. We will find her. You must come down now. The stairs are beginning to burn. Hurry. Esperanza held the towel over her face and looked down the stairs. Curtains flamed up the walls. The house was enveloped in a fog that thickened toward the ceiling. Mama and Esperanza crouched down the stairs while Alfonso was waiting to lead them out through the kitchen. In the courtyard, the wooden gates were open. Near the stables, the vaqueros were releasing the horses from the corrals. Servants scurried everywhere. Where were they going? Where's Abuelito? Abuelito, cried Mama. Esperanza felt dizzy. Nothing seemed real. Was she still dreaming? Was this her own imagination gone wild? Miguel grabbed her. Where's your mother and Abuelito? Esperanza whimpered and looked towards Mama. He left hers, stopped at Mama, then ran to the house. The winds caught the sparks from the house and carried them to the stables. Esperanza stood in the middle of it all, watching the outlines of her home silhouetted in flames against the night sky. Someone wrapped a blanket around her. Was she cold? She did not know. Miguel ran out of the burning house, carrying Abuelita in his arms. He laid her down, and Hortensia screamed. The back of his shirt was on fire. Alfonso tackled him, rolling him over and over on the ground until the fire was out. Miguel stood up and slowly took off the blackened shirt. He wasn't badly burned. Mama cradled Abuelito in her arms. Mama, said Esperanza, is she? No, she is alive, but weak, and her ankle, I don't think she can walk, said Mama. Esperanza melted down. Abuelito, where were you? Your grandmother held up the cloth bag with her crocheting and after some minutes of coughing whispered, we must have something to do while we wait. The fire's anger could not be contained. It spread to the grapes. The flames ran across the deliberate rows of the vines like long curved fingers reaching for the horizon, lighting the night sky. Esperanza stood as if in a trance and watched El Rancho de las Rosas burn. Mama, Abuelito, and Esperanza slept in the servants' cabins. They really didn't sleep much, but they didn't cry either. They were numb, as if encased in a thick skin that nothing could penetrate, and there was no point in talking about how it happened. They all knew that the uncles had arranged the fire. At dawn, still in her nightgown, Esperanza went out among the rubble. Avoiding the smoldering piles, she picked through the black wood, hoping to find something to salvage. She sat on an adobe block near what used to be the front door and looked over at Papa's rose garden. Flowerless stems were covered in soot. Dazed and hugging herself, Esperanza survived the surviving victims, the twisted forms of wrought iron chairs, unharmed cast iron skillets, and the mortars and pestles from the kitchen that were made from lava rock and refused to burn. Then she saw the remains of the trunk that used to sit at the foot of her bed. The metal straps were still intact. She stood up and hurried toward it, hoping for una maligna, a miracle. She looked closely, but all that remained were black cinders. There was nothing left inside for some day. Esperanza saw her uncles approaching on horseback and ran to tell the others. Mama waited on the steps of the cabin with her arms crossed, looking like a fierce statue. Alfonso, Hortensia, and Miguel stood nearby. Ramona, said Tio Marco, remaining on his horse, another sadness in so short a time. We are deeply sorry. I have come to give you another chance, said Tio Luis. If you reconsider my proposal, I will build a bigger and more beautiful house, and I will replant everything. Of course, if you prefer, you can live here with the servants, as long as another tragedy does not happen to their homes as well. There is no main house or fields where they can work. So you see that many people's lives and jobs depend on you. And I am sure you want the best for Esperanza, do you not? Mamma did not speak for several moments. She looked around at the servants who had gathered. Now her face did not seem so fierce, and her eyes were damp. Esperanza wondered where the servants would go when Mamma told Tio Luis no. Mamma looked at Esperanza with eyes that said, "Forgive me." Then she dropped her head and stared at the ground. "I will consider your proposal," said Mamma. Tio Luis smiled. "I am delighted. I have no doubt that you will make the right decision. I will be back in a few days for your answer." "Mamma, no," said Esperanza. And she turned to Tio Luis and said, "I hate you." Tio Luis ignored her. "And Ramona, if Esperanza is to be my daughter, she must have better manners. In fact, today I will look into boarding schools where they can teach her to act like a lady." Then he turned his horse, dug his spurs into the animal, and rode away. Esperanza began to weep. She grabbed Mamma's arm and said, "Why? Why did he Why did you tell him that?" But Mamma was not listening to her. She was looking up, as if consulting the angels. Finally, she said, "Alfonso, Hortensia, we must talk with Abuelito, Esperanza, and Miguel. Come inside. You are old enough to hear the discussions." "But Mamma." Mamma took Esperanza by the shoulder and faced her. "Mija, my daughter, do not worry. I know what I'm doing." They all crowded into Hortensia's and Alfonso's tiny bedroom where Abuelita was resting, her swollen ankle propped on pillows. Esperanza sat on Abuelita's bed while Mamma and the others stood. "Alfonso, what are my options?" said Mamma. "If you don't intend to marry him, Signora, you cannot stay here. He would burn down the servants' quarters next. There will be no income because there are no grapes. You would have to depend on the charity of others, and they would be afraid to help you. You could move to some other part of Mexico, but in poverty. Luis's influence is far reaching." The room was quiet. Mamma looked out the window and tapped her fingers on the wooden sill. Hortensia went to Mamma's side and touched her arm. "You should know that we have decided to go to the United States. Alfonso's brother has been writing to us about the big farm in California where he works. He can arrange jobs in a cabin for us too. We are sending the letter tomorrow." Mamma looked and turned to Abuelito. With no word spoken, Abuelito nodded. "What if Esperanza and I went with you to the United States?" said Mamma. "Mamma, we cannot leave Abuelito." Abuelito put her hand on Esperanza. "I would come later when I'm stronger." "But my friends and my school, we can't just leave. And Papa, what would he think?" "What should we do, Esperanza? Do you think Papa would want me to marry Tio Luis and let him send you to a school in another city?" Esperanza felt confused. Her uncle said he would replace everything as it was, but she could not imagine Mamma being married to anyone but Papa. She looked at Mamma's face and saw sadness, worry, and pain. Mamma would do anything for her, but if Mamma married Tio Luis, she knew that everything would not really be as it was. Tio Luis would send her away, and she and Mamma wouldn't even be together. "No," she whispered. "You are sure that you want to go with us?" said Esperanza. "I am sure," said Mamma, her voice stronger, "but crossing the border is more difficult these days. You have your papers, but ours were lost in the fire, and they will forbid anyone to enter without a visa." "I will arrange it," said Abuelito. "My sisters in the convent, they can discreetly get you duplicates." "No one could know about this, Signora," said Alfonso. "We would all have to keep it a secret if you come. This will be a great insult to Luis. If he finds out, he will prevent you from leaving the territory." A tiny smile appeared on Mamma's tired face. "Yes, it would be a great insult to him, wouldn't it?" "In California, there is only field work," said Miguel. "I am stronger than you think," said Mamma. "We will help each other." Hortensia put her arm around Mamma. Abuelita squeezed Esperanza's hand. "Do not be afraid to start over. When I was your age, I left Spain with my mother, father, and sisters. A Mexican official had offered my father a job here in Mexico, so we came. We had to take several ships, and the journey lasted months. When we arrived, nothing was as promised. There were many hard times, but life was also exciting. and we had each other. Esperanza, do you remember the story of the phoenix, the lovely young bird that is reborn from its own ashes? Esperanza nodded. Abuelita had read it to her many times from a book of myths. We are like the phoenix, said Abuelito, rising again with a new life ahead of us. When she realized she was crying, Esperanza wiped her eyes with her shawl. Yes, she thought, they could have a home in California, a beautiful home. Alfonso and Atenzo and Miguel could take care of them, and they'd be rid of the uncles, and Abuelita would join them as soon as she was well. Still sniffling and caught up in their affection and strength, Esperanza said, and and I can work too. They all looked at her, and for the first time since Papa died, everyone laughed. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this part of Esperanza uh, Rising, and I will be back 1:15 tomorrow, Thursday, for the next portion. Have a good day.